We're talking about people that have been here for 20 years and that have 5 children that are U.S. citizens, and that they came here under this message that don't worry about it, you can get into this country, don't worry about it, you can work and nobody's ever going to ask about it, and now we're going to deport them. To me, that it's absolutely wrong.
One of the many criticisms of Donald Trump centers on his pledge to deport, to forcibly relocate all 11 million undocumented immigrants in the US in his first 2 years in office. But remember, this is how he defended that odious policy in the second presidential debate.
Nobody knows about it, nobody talks about it, but under Obama, millions of people have been moved out of this country. They've been deported.
Now, annoyingly, he's got a point, kind of. The truth is that the Obama administration has deported 2.5 million undocumented immigrants from the United States over 2 terms. 2.5 million. That's the highest number for any president ever. In fact, Obama is on course to have deported more people in his 8 years in office than all of the presidents of the 20th century combined.
The United States government is deporting historic numbers of undocumented immigrants. This despite promises by President Obama and U.S. lawmakers to pass immigration reforms. Now, a group of Hispanic Americans are fed up with the delays and are finding new ways to bring about a change in policies. Our White House correspondent Jessica Stone reports.
With one simple phrase, National Council of La Raza President Janet Murguia signaled the height of Hispanic American anger at U.S. President Barack Obama, saying, quote, "For us, this president has been the deporter in chief."
I guess that explains why his immigration enforcement budget in 2015 was a whopping $18 billion. That's $3 billion more than the budgets of all the other major domestic law enforcement agencies combined.
There are about 50 million Latinos living in the U.S. today, and Obama's tough enforcement policies have deeply angered many of them on a personal level.
Somewhere in America today, there's a man missing his wife. There's a woman missing her husband. There's a destroyed family. And it doesn't have to be that way.
More than half of Latino voters know someone who's undocumented. More than a quarter know someone who's been detained or deported.
This enforcement policy and the deportation's largely invisible to most voters, I'd say. It appears in the English language media every once in a while. It's on Spanish language television all the time. All the time. And I promise you, the sense of human cost that's resulted from this enforcement effort is very real to Latino voters.
He promised us that he was going to give us immigration reform, and what did he give us? 1 million people have been deported. And so we're very angry, and we're locking up our votes, and we were not going to give them to him unless he delivers.
As a candidate, Obama had been sympathetic to their cause.
When communities are terrorized by ICE immigration raids, when nursing mothers are torn from their babies, when children come home from school to find their parents missing, when people are detained without access to legal counsel, when all that's happening, the system just isn't working, and we need to change it.
Now, the Obama administration says the vast majority of the people it deports are people with criminal records, felons, threats to national security, which sounds reasonable, except that a study in 2014 found that 2/3 of deportation cases involved people who had committed minor infractions, including traffic violations, or had no criminal record at all.
If you vote Democratic, you might say to yourself, why would someone call President Barack Obama the deporter-in-chief? Here is a New York Times article from September of 2012. In the fiscal year 2011, immigration agents deported 391,000 foreign-born people, an all-time high for such deportations. Most Americans are unaware in the first 3 years President Barack Obama was in office, 2009, 10, and 11, he was deporting a record number of illegal immigrants from this country, numbers way higher than under President Trump.
Andrew Sullivan, why do you think it is that Republican politicians in D.C. support policies with which virtually all of their constituents disagree?
Like who?
Well, I guess they're thinking about something like the Dreamers. People support the Dreamers overwhelmingly. I mean, they do support a lot of the things that...
What I found interesting is that, the Republicans have not, no one can be. It's a question of human decency that people who've lived here for half their lives not be taken to a country they don't even recognize. There's something about that that's just so disgusting. It violates the core meaning of this country.
Take the case of Jose Marvin Martinez, who fled Honduras age 16 after his brother was murdered by suspected gang members. In 2014, he was deported back to his home country, and just 4 months later, he was shot to death by suspected gang members. Or how about Giovanni Miranda, who arrived in the United States as a child and was working legally when he had a minor traffic accident in 2009. When immigration officers discovered he'd been charged with a minor drug possession offense 7 years earlier, they sent him back to El Salvador, a homeland he'd never known. 3 years after his return, he was murdered by a gang in front of his wife and newborn child. These are just 2 out of tens of thousands of real-life stories, real-world tragedies that many say will forever taint Obama's record on human rights and especially on immigration. So complain as much as you like about Trump's grotesque deportation plans, but the fact is that he's inheriting the most sophisticated and well-funded human expulsion machine in the history of the country from his Democratic predecessor. And shed as many tears as you like for outgoing President Barack Obama, but never forget that until Donald Trump came along, he was the deporter-in-chief.
Around the country, immigrant advocates have rallied and marched to stop Obama's policies, which have led to nearly 2 million deportations of undocumented immigrants.
The deportations are getting more aggressive.
President Barack Obama can be correctly categorized as a deporter-in-chief. This is an article from the American Immigration Council.org, and it shows that from July 2010 to September 31st, 2012, over 204,000 parents of U.S. citizen children were removed from the United States. 23% of all individuals deported in this time frame were parents of U.S. citizens. Barack Obama was separating 204,000 parents from their children here in the United States.
At the White House, President Obama's top advisor on immigration is Cecilia Munoz.
Even the supporters of the president, the Illinois governor, have said secure communities is doing more damage. And in fact, there's collateral damage of mothers being separated from their children, of fathers being separated from their children.
Right.
Is this collateral damage that this administration is prepared to accept?
Well, as a result of the concerns raised by the governor of Illinois, the governor of Massachusetts, and others, DHS made adjustments in how it's implementing the policy. So the feedback from the community has been important in shaping DHS's work. But at the end of the day, when you have a community of 10 million, 11 million people living and working in the United States illegally, some of these things are going to happen, even if the law is executed with perfection. There will be parents separated from their children.
Obama separated the children, by the way. Just so you understand, President Obama separated the children. Those cages that were shown, I think they were very inappropriate. They were built by President Obama's administration.
Why do I say President Trump is telling a half-truth here? This is an article from June 23rd of 2019, USA Today, and it's about President Trump and fact-checking that he falsely claims Obama was separating families at the border. And towards the end of the article, it admits that, yes, President Obama was separating families at the border. The Obama administration sought to keep families together in detention, unlike President Trump for several months in 2018. But a court ruling held those children could not be held more than 20 days. So officials began to release entire families, except in cases where custody could not be established or the parents were being prosecuted for another crime, such as drug smuggling, according to PolitiFact. So yes, indeed, Trump, he's exaggerating, he's kind of half lying here. Yeah, Obama was separating some parents from their children at the border during his administration. Was it the same policy Trump implemented in 2018? No. But
President Obama separated 204,000 U.S. citizen parents from their children during the first 3 years he was in office, and from time to time at our southern border, President Obama was court-ordered to separate some parents from their children. So this issue is way more complicated than the media is leading you to believe, and what frustrates me is the confusion in the media causes us not to realize both the Democrats and Republicans are to blame for this crisis. Let's come together as Democrats and Republicans and solve this issue and stop the human suffering. This is a tragedy that should not be continuing. This is the most politically explosive or politically charged video Teddy Roosevelt 2019 will ever post to his site. And the reason it's so politically charged or explosive is because it's sharing with the viewer information the mainstream media doesn't talk about and didn't talk about. President Obama had a majority in the House and Senate in 2009 and 10, and he could have passed immigration reform without a single Republican vote, just like he passed health care reform. Yet at that very same time, he was deporting a record number of illegal immigrants and requesting $18 billion per year to fund immigrations and customs enforcement. Now, opponents on the left say President Trump is wrong for requesting a border wall. The total construction cost for a border wall is roughly $30 to $35 billion. So that is roughly 2 years of Obama's budget that Obama was spending to deport people. Now you can argue the merits of a border wall, yes or no, etc. But most Americans are unaware, number one, how much we're spending on immigration and customs enforcement, and number two, how many Hispanic and Latino families were ripped apart under a Democratic president while he had a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. President Obama separated over 204,000 parents from their U.S. citizen children in his first 3 years in office. Now Trump is doing similar things. He's separating parents from their children. But the scale under Obama is higher. What frustrates me about this issue is some of my students have been personally affected by this. I won't share those stories here. And my friends and colleagues, when I shared this information with them in 2011, I was unaware this was happening until in the fall of 2011, I started teaching 10th grade history again, which is U.S. history in our school from 1877 to the present, and I researched current immigration policy, which is part of the state standard. And I was shocked to come across article after article after article about how Obama was the deporter-in-chief 2.5 years into his presidency. Sadly, my friends had little reason to believe me, as the media was not covering this issue, so most of my friends chose to just ignore this issue. I asked 53 people, friends, relatives, colleagues, people I know in the community, neighbors, to email Congress about this issue. Only 3 took the time to do so. And I understand why. They're not bad people, but I was telling them something that was hugely important that no one in the mainstream media, Saturday Night Live wasn't talking about this, the late night talk shows weren't talking about this, the Star Tribune wasn't talking about Obama deporting a record number of illegal immigrants. What is wrong with our media in this country, and how frustrated must the Latino and Hispanic community must have been for helping to put President Obama in office and being let down this bad by him.
Obama had child separation. President Obama separated children. They had child separation. I was the one that changed it.
No, you didn't. Obama didn't have a family separation policy. Remember, it was announced as a change of policy by Jeff Sessions. He called it zero tolerance, as in your feelings toward Mexicans. It was the brainchild of Stephen Miller and John Kelly. You told Kirstjen Nielsen to implement it, and now she'll be scraping that hot black tar off her soul for the rest of eternity. It didn't stop people from coming. It was a monstrous act of cruelty. Don't get me wrong. Obama's no angel here.
Hi, Mommy.
In Maple Park, Illinois, the Arceo family has been pulled apart. Last March, Antonio's wife, Roxana Garcia, who'd been stopped for speeding, was deported back to Mexico. She had a previous record of crossing the border illegally. Left behind were her husband and her 5 American-born children. If your wife, before she was deported, was in charge of 5 kids, what happened after she was deported? How did you handle this?
I didn't handle the situation. The situation definitely handled me.
Actor Peter Fonda targets President Donald Trump's 12-year-old son Barron in a late-night Twitter rant about the separation of immigrant families at the U.S. border. In all-caps tweet he later deleted, SFGate reports Fonda saying, "We should rip Barron Trump from his mother's arms and put him in a cage with pedophiles and see if mother will stand up against the giant a-hole she's married to."
Although he had help from friends and his church, Antonio had a tough time making ends meet. There were times when he had no one to pick up the kids at school, and so they stayed with him at his repair shop.
They don't understand how their mother could have been thrown out of the country because of a simple piece of paper. They are American citizens that are going to be productive for this country one day. How can you take away the most important pillar in their life? Their mother. I don't understand.
At times, Antonio has his doubts about making it without Roxana and considers moving his family back to Mexico.
Don't get me wrong, Obama's no angel here.
Would you want to go back to Mexico?
No, not really.
Have you ever been to Mexico?
No.
So when your dad talks about maybe the solution is to go back to Mexico, what do you think about that, David?
Well, just the thought of having to pack everything up and leaving my country to be somewhere I've never even been, it just doesn't seem right to me.
Don't get me wrong, Obama's no angel here. Yeah. Come on. Yeah, I mean, there is ample evidence of Barack taking kids from their parents, subjecting them to harsh interrogations, even confiscating all of their hugs.
Mr. President, without a doubt, I guess you agree that your credibility has been somewhat tarnished with...
On a Telemundo televised town hall, U.S. President Barack Obama shot back.
What I've said in the past remains true, which is until Congress passes a new law, then I am constrained in terms of what I'm able to do.
With that one finger that the president is pointing at Republicans, there's 4 that are pointing at him.
Tonight on Frontline, as a candidate, he promised to fix the immigration system.
The system just isn't working, and we need to change it.
As president, Obama cracked down hard.
What did he give us? 1 million people have been deported.
Frontline, the investigative reporting workshop, and correspondent Maria Hinojosa investigate Obama's tough immigration enforcement.
Hasn't the president ended up enacting the Republican agenda?
What the president is doing is enforcing the law of the land.
Examining his promise to deport hardened criminals.
1,000 murderers, 6,000 sex offenders, 45,000 serious drug violators.
While critics say the program has swept up thousands of immigrants with no criminal record.
A mother who had a broken taillight being separated, maybe forever, from her children?
They don't understand how their mother could have been thrown out of the country.
And investigating conditions in the vast network of immigrant detention centers.
Women harassed for sexual favors. Guards taking detainees and beating them, running them down like they were animals.
During her 3 months at Willacy, Mary says she endured repeated sexual assaults by a guard.
He kissed me, and then I pushed him, and then he said, well, I love big-breasted women. And then he took his hands and he said, well, do you like that? Does it feel good? Because you're locked up, so you don't know what it feels like. And I pushed him away.
But we did speak with dozens of former detainees and staff.
I would take account of how many detainees we saw.
Tawana Cooks-Allen was the mental health coordinator at Willacy.
We would make referrals to our department to see those.
She heard a lot of stories of abuse.
Men of color were coming to me talking about guards taking them in an area and beating them.
Teddy Roosevelt 2019 kind of wishes I did not have to have a YouTube channel. But the news media is so weird and so odd, I feel compelled to make videos like this. Here was a headline from June 21st of 2019. ICE claims more illegals were deported under Obama than Trump. In the article, that's an odd headline because you should be able to just look at the data. How many illegals were deported under Obama and how many were deported under Trump? And the headline writer and the author of this article seem unaware of the fact that, yes, President Obama did deport a record number of illegal immigrants. Since he announced his presidency, President Trump has repeatedly vowed to attack illegal immigrants, etc. And ICE and Customs Enforcement published figures Friday. Under the Obama administration, ICE deported more than 385,000 illegal immigrants each year in fiscal years 2009, 10, and 11, and hit a high of 409,000 in 2012, prompting critics to call Trump's predecessor, Obama, the deporter-in-chief. Under Trump, deportations are actually down. ICE deported 226,000 in 2017 and 250,000 in 2018. So why is the headline ICE claims more illegals were deported under Obama than Trump, when the very article proves with math, yeah, Obama did deport more illegal immigrants than President Trump?
We have a job to do. We enforce immigration law and we seek to remove people that are here illegally from the country in terms of protecting the public and also in terms of border security. We're setting records with our enforcement results.
In terms of apprehending people, putting them in a detention system, and then removing them from the country, the scale has gone way up. Under Obama, the numbers are significantly higher than they were under Bush. So Obama has juiced up the Bush policies.
We have strengthened border security beyond what many believed was possible.
Earlier this year, the president came to the border in El Paso
We now have more boots on the ground
to defend his tough enforcement policies,
and we are deporting those who are here illegally.
while at the same time pushing for comprehensive immigration reform.
Now we need to come together around reform that reflects our values as a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants.
The administration has believed since it was sworn in that in order to make the political ground fertile for a comprehensive immigration reform bill, that enforcement had to come first. But there is no chance of comprehensive immigration reform in the current political environment. There's no support on the Republican side.
Washington has been unable to enact new immigration legislation for like 20 years.
They are American citizens that are going to be productive for this country one day. How can you take away the most important pillar in their life? Their mother. I don't understand.
At times, Antonio has his doubts about making it without Roxana and considers moving his family back to Mexico.